Our love survived so much, until her final deception broke me. My girlfriend repeatedly deceived me and stole money to gamble. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore, and I kicked my pregnant girlfriend out. My name is David, and I'm 26 years old. Jenna and I first met through mutual friends, and from our initial interactions, it was clear we had a unique connection. She was 22, just starting her career in retail, brimming with an enthusiasm for life that was simply infectious. I worked in IT, had a stable job, and had recently secured a modest but cozy two-bedroom apartment in the city. It wasn't long before Jenna moved in with me, and we began building a life together in that small space I was proud to call home. From the outset, Jenna was adamant about contributing financially, despite my reservations given the newness of our relationship. She insisted on paying her share, eager to establish our partnership on equal footing. This insistence seemed to underline her commitment to our relationship and her desire to be responsible and independent. Jenna brought a vibrancy to my life that was hard to miss. Her laughter was infectious, her spirit indomitable. When we were together, it felt like we could conquer any challenge that came our way. This sense of partnership was bolstered when Jenna, amidst her joyous tears, told me she was pregnant. The news brought a new dimension to our relationship. It was no longer just about us, but about the future we were going to build for our growing family. In light of the pregnancy, we began making more concrete plans. The idea of marriage, which had floated in our conversations as a sweet thought, suddenly took on immediate importance. We decided to register our marriage soon, ensuring that everything would be in place when our child arrived. The plan was to have a small, intimate ceremony after the birth, celebrating our new family in the presence of our closest friends and family. These plans filled our home with a new kind of energy. We started organizing the apartment, turning the spare room into a nursery, picking out colors and themes, and discussing baby names in the evenings. Every step we took was a step toward crafting the life we had envisioned together. However, in the midst of this hopeful planning, the reality of Jenna's financial struggles and her inability to break away from her family's demands remained a looming issue. We knew that addressing these problems was critical, not just for the stability of our relationship, but for the well-being of our child. It began subtly, with Jenna often appearing stressed around the end of the month, her demeanor shadowed by the looming pressure of bills and debts. I knew about her financial commitments, but the depth of her struggles became evident only when certain discrepancies came to light under our shared roof. Initially, Jenna had promised to handle her finances more responsibly and to contribute regularly to our shared expenses. However, as time passed, her contributions became sporadic, and her excuses grew in frequency. I started noticing more signs of financial distress. Unopened bills piled up on the counter, and increasingly frantic phone conversations that she tried to shield from me. Armed with the truth and a heavy heart, I confronted Jenna that evening. It was one of the most challenging conversations of my life. I asked her about the letters, the gambling, and the clothes. At first, she tried to deny it, but faced with the evidence, she broke down. Jenna revealed how her family had always relied on her financially. Since securing her first job, she had been the pillar her family leaned on for financial support. This expectation, deeply ingrained from a young age, had burgeoned into a relentless cycle of demands and guilt. Every payday, her phone would light up with messages from her mother or sisters, each one a new plea for money. The reasons varied: rent, medical bills, urgent repairs, or just making ends meet. The amounts she sent home left little for her own needs, let alone our shared expenses. The gambling, she confessed, began as a desperate measure to meet both her family's demands and our household expenses. What started as an attempt to quickly double a small sum spiraled out of control, pulling her deeper into the quagmire of addiction. She described how the thrill of a potential win was soon overshadowed by the despair of consecutive losses, each gamble a further step away from financial stability. The discussion about the stolen clothes was particularly painful. Jenna tearfully admitted that she had taken them to give as gifts to her family, who expected presents even when she couldn't afford them. She was trying to maintain a facade of stability and generosity with them, even while drowning financially. This revelation was a turning point in our relationship. The trust that formed the foundation of our life together had been severely damaged. I felt betrayed and hurt, but also deeply concerned for Jenna. She was caught in a destructive cycle, manipulated by her family's demands, and struggling with a gambling issue that was her misguided solution to financial pressure. After confronting Jenna about her gambling and the financial deceit, I realized that the situation couldn't continue as it was. It was a difficult conversation, one that required laying everything on the table: the deceit, the theft, the gambling, all of it. I told Jenna that for us to move forward, there needed to be complete transparency and a commitment to change. The future of our relationship and the well-being of our soon-to-be expanded family depended on it. Jenna's response was solemn but hopeful. She acknowledged the pain she had caused and expressed her determination to make things right. She agreed to my request to have regular access to her bank statements. It was a practical measure, not one I took any pleasure in demanding, but necessary to rebuild the trust she had broken. She also agreed to set up a strict budget for personal spending and contribute a fixed amount monthly towards household expenses directly from her paycheck. The revelations of that day changed everything. Trust, the cornerstone of any relationship, had been deeply eroded. The path ahead was uncertain. Could I trust Jenna again? Could our relationship survive the twin shadows of deceit and addiction? These questions haunted me, but amidst the turmoil, a resolve formed within me. I cared deeply for Jenna, and if there was a chance to salvage our future together, I was willing to try. Update: for a while, things seemed to improve. Jenna appeared more open about her finances, showing me her bank statements without hesitation. She made her contributions to the household consistently, and we even started to have open discussions about money, something that had always been a tension point for us. It felt like we were finally making progress, rebuilding the trust and partnership we had once taken for granted. However, this period of improvement was short-lived. The facade of recovery crumbled one evening, about 3 months after our initial confrontation. Jenna had been more withdrawn than usual, a sign I had come to recognize as indicative of underlying stress. While she was in the kitchen, her phone lit up with a notification that caught my eye. Loan accepted by ex-lender. Click here to accept. My heart sank. When Jenna returned, I confronted her immediately. The trust I had been cautiously rebuilding shattered with the sight of that message. She broke down, confessing that despite her earlier promises, she had taken out another payday loan. She explained that her expenses had overrun her budget this month more than she had admitted, and she felt this was her only way out. Her justification did little to assuage the sense of betrayal. I reminded her of our agreement: no more loans, no more secrets. Yet here we were again, facing the same issue of hidden debts and financial irresponsibility. It was a painful realization that despite her promises, Jenna hadn't fully committed to changing her behavior or addressing the underlying issues that led to her financial recklessness. I asked to see her bank statements, something she had agreed to share openly. This time, however, she refused, claiming that I was being controlling and that she needed to handle her finances independently to truly learn from her mistakes. This refusal was a red flag, indicating that not only was Jenna backsliding, but she was also not ready to fully confront her issues as we had planned. The confrontation that night did not resolve anything. Jenna's reluctance to show her bank statements and her decision to take out another loan without discussing it with me first showed that our earlier resolutions were superficial. The underlying issues, her handling of financial pressure, her dependency on quick fixes like loans, and her inability to resist impulses to spend, remained unaddressed. The tension in the air was palpable as I confronted Jenna about the latest incident: the missing cash and the money ostensibly used to pay for the sofa that had been sold to her mother. It was a few weeks after Jenna had moved back in a bid to provide stability for our soon-to-arrive baby. However, the peace was short-lived. I had discovered that a substantial amount of cash, money that was a gift and meant for our future needs, particularly with the baby on the way, was missing. Compounding this issue was the fact that Jenna's mother had only partially paid for the sofa, despite agreeing to pay the full amount, and now claimed dissatisfaction with its condition as a pretext to delay further payments. When I brought up these issues, Jenna's initial reaction was defensive. She vehemently denied any wrongdoing, claiming ignorance about the missing cash. But the evidence was too concrete, the circumstances too coincidental. The trust I had tried to rebuild was crumbling rapidly under the weight of continual deceit. Her defensiveness quickly turned to accusations. Jenna claimed that my focus on finances and tracking every penny was controlling, that it overshadowed her emotional and physical needs, especially during her pregnancy. She argued that my insistence on transparency and accountability was a form of surveillance, not partnership. The cycle of deceit had not been broken, and the realization was a bitter pill to swallow. The trust that is so crucial in any relationship was once again in jeopardy, and with a baby on the way, the stakes were higher than ever. This was not just about us anymore. It was about the future and stability of our family. The pain of her betrayal was compounded by the fear of how her actions could affect our child. The conversation escalated, emotions running high. I was torn between the hurt from her betrayals and the empathy I felt for her as the mother of my child. It was a moral and emotional quagmire, pulling at the very fibers of my being. How could I balance these feelings with the clear pattern of dishonesty and manipulation that had emerged? Update 2. The problems reached a peak last week when I decided it was time for a serious conversation with Jenna. Our relationship, already strained by her past actions, was at a crossroads, and with a baby on the way, I felt it necessary to establish clear ground rules. I sat her down and explained earnestly that our dynamic needed to change drastically. "We're a family," I told her, emphasizing that the birth of our child meant we needed a solid foundation, free from secrets and financial instability. I made it clear that openness about finances was non-negotiable, insisting she needed to contribute more consistently to household expenses and cease accumulating debt she couldn't afford, a habit that had caused much stress and discord in our relationship. Jenna seemed receptive and agreed to my terms. She promised to be more transparent with her finances, including showing me her bank statements regularly, and committed to cutting down on her spending. For a moment, it felt like we were making progress. Perhaps we were finally turning a corner toward a healthier partnership. She moved back in, and I believed that we were starting to mend our relationship. However, this hope was short-lived. Just last night, while Jenna was in the kitchen, a notification popped up on her phone. It was a message from a lender confirming a loan that had just been approved. My heart sank. It was as if all the promises she had just made were nothing but air. Confronting her immediately, I asked her about the loan. Tears welled up in her eyes as she admitted she had no money left for the month and had resorted to taking out a payday loan. Her confession was a blow to any trust that had been rebuilt. I reminded her sternly that we had agreed on no more loans, that she should have come to me first. Jenna's response was one of despair. She said she couldn't afford her share of the bills again. Despite her full-time job, her income was erratic, often reduced to sick pay due to frequent absences, which didn't cover much. Frustrated, I asked to see her bank statements for proof of her financial status and to understand where her money was going. She refused and accused me of being controlling, arguing that I didn't need to see her finances since she had already told me about them. This refusal was the final straw for me. I suspected that not only was she possibly still gambling, but she might also be funneling money to her family again. In a moment of desperation to highlight the severity of our situation, I posed a hypothetical scenario to her. "What would you do if our baby was starving and there was no food in the house?" Her answer was dismissive and chilling. "You'll have to pay." This response confirmed my worst fears about her priorities. I then asked to check her Facebook Messenger, to see if her family was still requesting money, but discovered that she had deleted all her messages with the family members who usually borrowed money from her. She claimed she deleted them to keep things tidy, yet all other messages were intact. At that point, I knew our relationship was beyond repair. Jenna labeled me a controlling freak, and we haven't spoken since. Reflecting on our relationship, I suspect that her issues are deeply rooted in her upbringing, issues that she is either unwilling or unable to confront and change. I know a lot of people questioned whether she's pregnant, how stupid I was to get her pregnant. I agree, and if it's mine. I've been to every scan, so I know she's pregnant. As for if it's mine, I've never suspected cheating, but she's a serial liar, so I will be forcing a DNA test through the courts. I posted on a couple of different subs to make sure I wasn't getting biased opinions. The above story is 100% true, but my focus is now getting as far away as possible from her for my own sake. Despite the personal feelings and the breakdown of our relationship, I remain committed to being involved in my child's life. I've attended every prenatal scan and am confident about Jenna's pregnancy. However, given the deceit surrounding other aspects of her life, I'm planning to request a DNA test to eliminate any doubts about paternity. This isn't about trust. It's about ensuring that every step forward is based on transparency and truth. Update 3A. A couple of weeks ago, I made the decision to let Jenna back into the house after learning she was bouncing around, staying on sofas at family members' and friends' homes. She was about 8 months pregnant at the time, and my concern was mainly for the well-being of our unborn child. In hindsight, I see this as a mistake, one that I deeply regret for reasons I'm about to share. We had recently moved to a new house, and during the times I was out, Jenna took charge of most of the unpacking. Hidden in a living room cabinet drawer was a significant sum of cash, approximately $400 to $500, a Christmas gift from my parents. During this period, I also decided to sell some old furniture, including a sofa that Jenna persistently asked me to sell to her mother. Despite my reservations, I agreed, influenced by Jenna's repeated requests. She explained that her mother wanted to borrow money to pay for the sofa and would settle the payment a couple of weeks later. I didn't think much of it at the time and accepted the arrangement. When her mother came to collect the sofa, she handed me $100 in cash as an initial payment, promising the remainder the following week. However, when the time came, not only did she fail to pay, but she also complained that the sofa had collapsed and demanded that I inspect it. I refused, stating the sofa was in good condition when she took it, and if she was unsatisfied, I would take it back and sell it to someone else. This led to a heated exchange, where she barred me from her house. My girlfriend sided with her mother, accusing me of being controlling and unnecessarily involving myself in a family dispute. Later, when I realized the cash was missing from the drawer, I searched the entire house to no avail. Everything else was unpacked, even trivial items like a blown light bulb. When I confronted Jenna about the missing money, she defensively claimed it was somewhere, echoing the vague excuses she had given before. It struck me then. The cash gift was composed of $10 notes, the same denomination as the partial payment for the sofa. I suspected that Jenna had stolen the money to facilitate her mother's partial payment to me, effectively making me pay myself minus the stolen amount. When confronted, Jenna coldly admitted she might have taken it, but dismissed the importance of my feelings or our relationship, stating she didn't care about me anymore. This revelation coincided suspiciously with her recent attempt to take out a new loan, likely around the same time she took the cash. Her actions and her threats to tarnish my reputation to others as retaliation further underscored her manipulative behavior. Despite the absence of concrete proof beyond her reaction, her demeanor provided all the confirmation I needed of her guilt. Moving forward, I've decided to arrange a DNA test once our child is born to ensure clarity on paternity. This step is crucial not out of distrust of her fidelity, but to establish a factual basis for any future decisions regarding our child's upbringing. Final update. When my son was born last week, it was a pivotal moment that I hoped would herald a fresh start for us as a family. I had arranged for a DNA test, driven by the complex weave of trust issues that had plagued our relationship. When the results confirmed that he was indeed my biological son, a profound sense of relief washed over me. Witnessing the birth of my child and seeing Jenna endure the pain of labor filled me with compassion and reignited feelings of tenderness towards her. In those moments, surrounded by the stark walls of the hospital delivery room, I found myself wanting to believe that we could still salvage our relationship. I thought, perhaps naively, that the birth of our son could be a new beginning, a reason for Jenna to change her destructive habits. Moved by these emotions, I decided to give Jenna another chance, telling myself that love could still overcome the hurdles we faced. After all, aside from the financial deceptions, our love for each other had been genuine and deep. In a bid to support her during her recovery, and to help with the expenses that come with a newborn, I handed her a substantial sum of money to cover the hospital bills and to buy essentials for our son. My family, too, rallied around us, offering their support both emotionally and financially. They visited the hospital bearing gifts and donations to ensure Jenna and our newborn had everything they needed. However, within a week of our son's birth, it became painfully clear that Jenna's old habits were deeply ingrained. Despite the new life we had just welcomed into the world, Jenna slipped back into her old ways. I discovered that the money meant for hospital bills and our son's needs had vanished. After some digging, I learned the bitter truth. Jenna had spent it all at the casinos. Just a week into motherhood, and she was already back to gambling. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the trust, the safety of our child, and the responsibilities that come with being parents. Jenna's actions showed a reckless disregard for our son's well-being and a continuation of the selfish behavior that had marked so much of our time together. I felt betrayed on a level I hadn't known before, and anger and hatred began to replace the feelings of sympathy and hope I had felt at the hospital. The conclusion I've come to is a painful but clear one. Jenna is unlikely to change. Her actions have consistently shown a pattern of taking advantage of situations and people, including those closest to her. It was a decisive moment for me. I could no longer allow my son to grow up in an environment where his mother's destructive habits could affect his life so detrimentally. The love I had for Jenna, which had once seemed unshakable, crumbled under the weight of her continued deceit and irresponsibility. I made the difficult decision to separate myself and my son from Jenna. Filing for sole custody was the next logical step. I consulted with a lawyer to understand my options and to ensure that my son would be protected from potential harm. The legal battle that lay ahead would no doubt be challenging, but I was determined to provide a stable and secure environment for my son, one free of the chaos and instability that Jenna brought into our lives. In parallel with these actions, I started arranging for more structured support systems. I reached out to family and friends, explaining the situation and garnering their support for what was to come. Their responses were a mix of dismay and determination to help us get through this. I also began attending counseling to deal with the resentment and betrayal I felt, ensuring that these emotions wouldn't taint the relationship I wanted to build with my son. As I reflect on our relationship and its tumultuous end, I realize how deeply Jenna's actions have scarred me. Yet this ordeal has also clarified what truly matters. My focus now is entirely on my son, his happiness, his future, and his well-being. The journey ahead will be filled with challenges, but also with the joy of watching my son grow, unhindered by the shadows of a troubled relationship. The love I had for Jenna might never fully disappear, but the need to protect my son from her harmful behavior supersedes all else. As I move forward, my resolve is strengthened by the knowledge that I am doing what is best for my child. The path I've chosen is not just for my own peace, but for the upbringing of a child away from the instability and destructiveness of a gambler's life. My son deserves a chance at a better life, and I am committed to making that a reality. Reflecting on the relationship, I recognize the profound impact it had on my life. It was a stark lesson in the complexities of love and trust and the painful realities of betrayal. I had gone into the relationship with hope and love, which were met with deception and heartache. Yet these experiences shaped my understanding of what I value in relationships and what I must guard against.